right, here we go. Welcome everybody to the Just Sell Method Masterclass series. I'm really excited about today's masterclass because we're actually talking to somebody who is going to be giving us some tips on speaking. And that is a dreadful space for any of us who are introverts or who've never gotten on a stage before. So Amy is going to give us a full rundown of how we're going to be able to do it successfully to help grow our agencies. If you haven't gone and watched the other masterclass series that we've done with Sean Denon and also Casey, they went over how to create great offers and close deals. And now Amy is going to help us build some brand authority. So Amy, welcome. Thank you so much for
being here. Hey, you're welcome. Thank you for this opportunity. I love speaking about this.
You're one of a needle in a haystack, I would say. I rarely meet people who love this, but this is exciting because I definitely know I was someone who avoided college speech class like nobody else. You know, I hated getting up in front of people, but I think over time I slowly built the confidence. And so hopefully you can give some pointers on that too, because I remember the first stage and it was super scary. I remember Michael and I got through it, high fives at the end, you know, all those nerves finally go away, but super pumped for this. So I know you're going to be sharing your screen and kind of walking everybody through all of your tips and tricks. We'll definitely follow up, I'm sure, with some good advice and good stories that you have to share with everybody. So if you're ready, let's just dive into it. Okay.
Let's rock and roll.
Cool.
I mean, first I would say this, you know, like it takes all kinds to make the world go around. You know what I mean? Like I got off of a speaking engagement the other day. Let me see if I can't hide that. Whoops. Oh, I guess you're just going to see the bottom of that. Oh, there we go. I just got off a speaking engagement the other day and somebody came out and met me outside and was like, you know, thanks, whatever. But she was like, I could never do that. And I go, yeah, I know, I get it. But it takes all kinds to make the world go round. So it's totally good. Like, we don't need like, you know, the same, whether you love to speak or you hate to speak, whether you're high energy or you have a different energy, like it doesn't matter. It takes all kinds to make the world go round. Right. So,
true.
Anyway, just wanted to share.
We're not all Tony Robbins, although I'm sure we would love to be, but you're absolutely right. And I have found that other quieter kind of introverted people definitely connect in different ways. Like I always eyeball people in the crowd and then I find somebody and we're like, now we're friends.
Perfect. You know, I love this topic so much too. And thank you so much for inviting me on, because I think as agency owners, this is such a key piece of like your overall like marketing strategy. Sorry, couldn't come up with the word. Overall marketing strategy. And when I look back at my speaking career, you know, there was a point where I did 97 speaking engagements in an 18-month period. But here's the thing that I don't say very often. So this is a little secret for the agency owners. During that time, now I'm more like motivational speaking, more like along the lines of positivity and happiness. But in the beginning, I got all of those engagements and I spoke on marketing and digital marketing and content creation. And that's how I built my marketing agency at the time. So you can do this. You don't have to speak, by the way, 97 times. That's not what I'm saying for you, but I suppose it's possible. But that is, though, how I started, like how I was able to sustain my marketing company and how I was able to get clients in the beginning. So that's how I built it. And so would love to share a little bit of that information with this crew here.
Very cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So let's rock and roll. Let's see. Sorry, I got my screens all different. All right. So I think a couple of things, like when you think of it from a marketing perspective, right? Like when I think of it from a marketing and a business perspective, I think of this. How much, and y'all can answer this question. This is the cool thing about talking to your crew, Brittany, is like they all know the statistics to all this. But if you think about like, what is the cost of acquisition for one of your clients? What is it? You don't have to, I mean, just what is it? Or what is the cost of acquisition if you run Facebook ads? What is the cost of acquisition for if you do traditional media? Like, what does that mean for you, right? And so when I think of speaking and I think of cost of acquisition, it changes. It changes the way I think about it, because what's the best thing that happens when you get off of a stage, right? So anyone who's ever spoken before, they get on the stage, they do their thing, and then they step off that stage, and the best thing that happens is like you have this line of people to talk to, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny because as children, like we learn to stand in a single file line,
Yeah.
and as adults, we do the same thing. And so that's exactly what happens. And those are people, those are leads for you, right? Those are people who loved what you had to say. Those are people who want to engage further with you. Those are people who have more questions for you. So, unless you're paying for the stage to speak, a lot of times, like in this world, in this avenue, we'll talk about like the different types of stages, but you may not pay for the stage, and you may not even get paid for the stage, right? You might do it for this line right here. This is why you're doing it, for the line. So there really was no cost of acquisition. I mean, maybe driving across town, or if it's, somewhere else that's not local, maybe it's a little bit of expenses to get there. But if you have 10 people in line and it costs you, well, you'd have more than 10 people, but if, and it costs you $500 flight ticket,
Right.
what is that? That's so little, right? So it's just a really cool way and a really great way to build your business. And as an agency owner, I was thinking through, like, we follow a whole process with our speakers, and like when they come in, building their authority, making sure they're positioned well, and then we kind of go into promotion and teach them how to profit from stage. So there's a lot of components there. We obviously won't cover all of them today, but I do want to kind of go through like just what do you need to like start to get to the stages? Where can you find those stages? So that you can start speaking, and then, whether it's selling from stage, talking about your agency, talking about the solutions that you provide. And as an agency owner, I think it's a little different than like a motivational speaker in how you position yourself, but doesn't matter whenever you're speaking, you're still positioning yourself as the expert, right? Or you're still positioning yourself as a thought leader. So, one of the things that we do really early on with these folks, and that you would want to do or have your team do, is design what the industry used to call a one sheet, but really it's no longer a one sheet, but we call them celebrity speaker kits. But there's a few things that we put on these things that I think are pretty critical. So just to kind of think through this, you're going to need a really great hook for your title of whatever it is that you're speaking about, right? So come up with a really great hook. So for this one, this is JJ. He actually has an agency more along the lines of personal branding, but impact millions by growing a personal brand. Okay, got it. Yes, please. Thank you. So that's a little bit of his hook. The other thing that if you're not a regular speaker, you're going to want to kind of think through is what is on that second page there. This is his celebrity speaker kit, by the way, that we created for him. So on the second page there on the lower right, you see there it says learner objectives. So if you just put on your marketing hat, like this should be so easy, I feel like, for agency owners, but put on your marketing hat and go, okay, look, what is the transformation that the audience is going to get from my talk on stage? So what are those learner objectives? And you should have 3 to 5. And the way that I like to say it is, what is the audience thinking when their butts go into the seats? And then how do you change the way that they're thinking once they, are standing up and hopefully giving you a standing ovation? So what is that? Yeah. What is that transformation that you
That's cool. So Amy, it's similar to like a lot of these guys do webinars, right? That's the more comfortable speaking space for a lot of people, similar to what they're going to be putting on those pages leading in to get webinar registrations. I would imagine it's like that incentive to giving them value from whatever they're sitting in. Very cool.
Yeah, so good. And, I consider a webinar a stage, a speaking stage, a speaking opportunity. So, and we can talk through that too. But yes, definitely. Very, very, to get a stage, whether it's virtual, to get a stage, whether it's local, to get a stage, whether it's live. I mean, a lot of the components are still, very much there and the same. Yeah. In fact, and we're going to roll into that here in just a second. So the other thing, two other things that I would make sure are on here are, if you have a great testimonial, and we call them authority logos, but who have you worked with? And it doesn't need to be like his is Starbucks and Coca-Cola. For you, it might just be recognizable authority logos within your space. And that's great too, right? So you're just positioning yourself.
Do you recommend that the testimonial is about the speaker and their personality, or is it about the topic or how they've been able to impact a business?
Depends what your strategy. That's a great question. So it depends what your strategy is, right? So if your strategy is to go in and get speaking engagements where you're going to be in front of the audience that buys from you, you might want to include something that is like a transformation from like what you can do, right? Like what it is that you provide. If you're going in as kind of like a bigger personality, as like a thought leader in that entire space, and you think you're going to be up against a lot of other speakers, let me put my event planner hat on for a moment, because I used to own an event planning company. So, when I think about when I was an event planner, you just like, as an event planner or somebody who's hiring speakers, the decision maker, they just want to make sure they're not making a giant mistake, right? Like their job's on the line for their boss, whether they're third party or an internal planner. So you want to be constantly like speaking to them as much as possible. So in that case, when you're trying to position yourself as a much larger personality or thought leader, you want to talk about, what matters to them. And in this case, our conference was great. You were amazing. Like as a event planner, it's like, oh man, okay, Google said that, great. Good stuff. But that's really good. I think it does depend on your strategy, though.
Cool.
For sure. So these are the different types of stages. So to roll into this, right? Like what you were saying, Brittany, is like when we're looking at stages for folks, or you're looking at places to speak, this is how we categorize it. And then I'm going to tell you where I would go if I was an agency owner. So you have your local stages. These are your local networking meetups, local chapters, maybe local association meetings. Oftentimes these look like and when I say local, I mean in your area that you can drive to. This usually looks like something like they have monthly meetings or they have quarterly meetings. Those are a lot of like the local stuff. You have your live, which are what most, like if you're a speaker, like, and you're like out to go get it. They have tunnel vision. Like speakers only think of live, but there's so many others, right? But this is typically what you would think of. Big live conferences, conventions, retreats, workshops, keynotes, breakouts, all of that. So those are live. You also have advocates. Advocates is within your own sphere of influence. So if it's on here, I'll show you. But this is more of like, how do you reach out to get speaking engagements immediately, like within a couple of days? How do you do that? Associations, big one, obvious. I want to say it's obvious, but maybe it's not. Obviously, for agency owners, like what niche are you in? Where can you go and find those associations? And I just start infiltrating them, whether like start local or state, or if your agency expands beyond that, then great, then expand beyond that. I know some agency owners are very local and localized, so that may or may not make a ton of sense depending on what your strategy is. But that's a big one. Virtual. Like, don't say no. I always tell our speakers, like, if you're a speaker, you need to speak, which means you need to say yes to the opportunities, right?
Yeah.
If I was an agency owner, I'd be saying yes to any speaking opportunity that came my way.
Right.
Great way to get in front of the right people.
That's very cool. And I actually don't think a lot of people consider the webinars that they're probably doing as like a stage. So it's such a key point, I think, that you brought up, because it's almost like practice ground too for those bigger stages. You do so many of these, and then you're like, it's actually not as scary when you're finally in person.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity from it. I mean, there's so many case studies that we have of folks that have done virtual or webinars and have converted into $50,000, $100,000 contracts just from that, So it's just, I just think of it as matching yourself to the audience. Like that's really what you're doing. Yeah, you might be delivering in a different way, but really you're matching yourself to the audience that you want to speak to. So if you can do that virtually, then hey, you can do it virtually, and this becomes your stage. So yeah. Industry niches, if you have certain companies or corporations, private entities, that kind of stuff, and then don't forget PR and media. And I don't know, maybe some of your clients do PR and media, like provide that as a service.
Yeah, I think everyone's on a podcast bandwagon at the moment.
Yeah.
I see them everywhere, and I'm like, wow, everybody's starting one up, which is super cool. But I think there is power in joining forces too with the people that you know in these groups or having your clients on. I'd love to get your take really quickly as we have this in front of us.
Yeah.
Your take on bringing on your own clients for your podcast, because I think this is becoming one of the I'd consider it a hot trend where we have agency owners who are now inviting on their successful clients, and that's all they're really talking about. Talk to me a little bit about your opinion on that. Are those the right guests to have, or do you feel like there's a different way to go about it?
I guess it's a matter of like, are you going for retention or are you going for lead generation? You
Mm.
know, like if you're servicing your clients and, establishing that relationship, it sounds like a great idea. When I was running Unlocking Happiness, that podcast was and Happiest Places to Work, both of them. That was a lead generation for me. So that was with the intention of like, we'll just use Happiest Places to Work. That was with the intention of getting business owners and decision makers and folks in HR on the podcast so that I could start the relationship with them and then determine if there's any opportunity to work together. So I think you can look at it two different ways.
Yeah.
But that's how I did it. But I also can see like if you have your clients on from a retention standpoint, maybe there's another vantage point that I'm not thinking of. But that sounds like a good way to do it. There's cost involved, obviously, to producing a podcast.
Yeah.
So well, depending on what level you're at, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes
What are
complete
your
sense.
thoughts?
Yeah, here's my thoughts on it because it is interesting. I actually had started one that we're doing right now, and I went in thinking, okay, everybody's bringing on their clients, and what does that do? It just showcases your expertise, and at the end of the day, that's just a play, kind of leveling you up onto a certain platform. What I ended up doing was like creating it into more tips and advice and things of that nature. We brought on someone who could share her story as well. And I thought there's a different angle to go about it where it's really just going to build a trust factor, which I think you can definitely do by having your clients on. I actually really like yours with the intention of lead generation. Bring on the people who you want to build relationships with, because I think a lot of people like talking about their expertise and you make them feel special, right? And that allows you to start a really organic, I think, healthy conversation
Yes.
in a platform that's used for promotion in a way that you probably both leverage it. But I actually really like that angle because I think I do see a lot of agency owners right now who are using really just their own client base to build these podcasts, which I think can work. And certainly I've seen plenty of them, go off to being pretty successful lead gen in itself because I think people are hearing it and they're like, oh, these people can help me. But there's something to be said for going out of your comfort zone,
Yeah.
inviting in people that you don't know yet, that you're just getting to know. I think there's a lot of power in that too.
I mean, that's so good. It really, I'm going to go to a word that makes me cringe a little bit, but it's also on the slide. So I'm just going to say it, but it's really goes back to the basics of networking, like, that's really the way that you just described it. I mean, that's what you're doing. So
Yeah, very cool.
which is very critical, I feel like, in building various companies. I don't know. We don't have to get into the weeds too much on this, but I think I think I can just kind of give you an overview and show our process of how and what you do once you kind of figure out, what stages. So when you build this out, we always say like tackle 3 at once. So start with 3 and then you can kind of build from there. Now, again, if I was an agency owner, local. I mean, that's just it, you have gold in your backyard, I feel like. So, and it's kind of a little bit of low hanging fruit, especially if you're new to speaking. So you can get those stages, a little easier than, if you go to the Grant Cardone's website and fill out a call for speaker application. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, sorry, let me go back. So I would say, local associations and virtual would be the 3 that I would, primarily focus on.
Cool.
And then we just do a reach out. This is our reach out. Y'all are marketing experts, so you probably look at this and you could tell me, no, I would do this differently or switch this around. But one of the things I'm just going to mention on here, when we do this, is kind of like our outreach steps. But there's two things that I think are critical to talk about, which is the process of video and integrating video in with your emails. So we do something that we call like a book me video, but it's very simple. You all have done it, I'm sure, in your own marketing outreach, which is just a Loom video or SendSpark or BombBomb or whatever it is that you use, right? And you are just talking to the person who is going to ultimately hire you. So you're just telling them, you're getting on video. Instead of just hiding behind an email, you're getting on video to introduce yourself, tell them what it is that you talk about, and that you would love to come in and speak to their members during one of their monthly meetings. So you're just kind of sending that along.
Nice. Oh, I really like that. I haven't heard that actually. I know a lot of outreach strategy with like lead gen. We talk a lot about that. And I think this is such a great point. Don't just go cold DMing someone on Facebook and be like,
yeah.
Put an actual face and voice to it. And it seems like it'll kind of be the glue that starts everything.
Yeah, because look, you're speaking, right? So like they want to see, like, I want to see Brittany, like what's her energy level about? Like, what is she, how does she show up in this world? So it really helps to position yourself when you do that, as opposed to just, maybe just going to, I don't know, I'm assuming maybe some of the agency owners have like their own personal brand. I'm not sure, but if you don't, and you just have your company website, like that's very hard to understand, like who you are and how you show up. And, is this something exciting that they want to bring to their members? So I just always like to add those into the reach outs. And if you have a speaker reel, that's kind of what the second video is. You may or may not have that. If our folks don't have it, that's great. We just, use what we can. You might have a YouTube channel. You might have a podcast that you can direct them to. Just, you're kind of like stacking value, as I like to say.
Got it.
And then, as marketers, let's not forget the power of a phone call. Just picking up the phone and talking to the person and asking them if there's an opportunity there. We probably book more stages on a phone call than we ever will via email.
Interesting. So, in the day of automation, I feel like the phone calls are dying. And so this is like a good reminder. Just
the phone. Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. I talked to my dad yesterday. It was his birthday, and he's like so proud that he did this thing. I'm like, hey, his name's Larry, but I call him Lair just for fun. Anyway, I'm like, Lair, has anyone called you today? And he's like, oh, you'll never imagine how many people have called me today. But he was so proud because he was like, but I tell you what, they're calling me because I started this thing like a year ago where I don't text, I don't put on Facebook when it's somebody's birthday. I actually call them. And he goes, wouldn't you know, it's working. Now they're calling me.
Aww, oh my gosh. That's so cute.
I thought it was so cute and so sweet. But yet, the underlying like business lesson there is like, but it's so true and it works, so.
Yeah, anyway. Very true.
Yeah. Okay. So now that's kind of the overview, I'm just going to give you just some tools. These are all free tools. So, we subscribe to a lot of lists and things for to find the events for our speakers, but here's some that are just, you can go to that will give you the contact name, right? We'll give you when the event is, we'll give you the phone number, email, all that stuff. And there's probably a lot more that y'all have access to that you could, start to dig into as well. These are just some of the freebie ones that are online.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, I want to end on this, if this is good with you, Brittany, is the advocates. So like, that's how you find all the stages. You come up with your strategy, do the reach outs, pick up the phone, call them, send the book me videos. Or I should say, and if you want to get the ball rolling, like if you want the momentum to get on the stages or to go to the front of the room and start speaking at meetings, this is how I would start. And you can use any variation of this. This is just a little template that we give our speakers. So you got to kind of put it in your own voice. Mm-hmm. You're going to reach out to your own like sphere, your own inner circle, right? Like those people who support you, those people who are always like, yes, it's amazing. Yes, good job. So proud of you. Those people, that's who you're going to reach out to. And you're going to say something along the lines of this. Like, thank you for your support. I am super thankful to have a community, a network of people who believe in me and what my message and my company stands for. Something along those lines. I know that expanding my message to reach more whoever, right? To reach more electricians, to reach more plumbers, to reach more whoever your audience is, will be the key to making change in this world. Do you know of any, and you can change this, local meetings? Do you know of any events? Do you know of any conferences that I could speak at to more electricians so that I can continue to make a difference?
Wow. Yeah.
So, yep.
That's so impactful. That middle sentence is like, has the most impact, right? Because now we're like, I want to make a difference in the world. Now they're going to support your cause, which is super cool. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. I'll show you what this looks like. I just did a variation of this. I did this on social media. So like you could send this as an email, you could put this on social media, but I did this. I was trying to generate some interest within schools, trying to get into schools and speak to schools. So I put this out, and just from this, right? And here's a little verbiage that you can use there at the end, which is very similar to what you just saw. But like, who do I know that can help connect me with the right people in these schools? Or maybe you're one of them. And from that, I actually ended up getting 49 leads.
Wow.
And that was just on my personal Facebook, right? So it's not hard, right? But it's just like anything else. You got to do it. And you know, you gotta roll with it. You can stop sharing my screen now.
Yeah, I'm hearing that we have to overcome the fear of asking, which is right, and that's such a real fear. I think the fear of rejection is what plays into that for a lot of people, and I think we're just not used to asking for something for ourselves in this way. And I think you would be surprised how many people are willing to support you. So it is speaking in itself. There's a lot of fears to overcome, but also like in the outreach, like as you begin all of this, you're going to be asking and networking and doing all these things that I think will slowly build your confidence and reducing that fear of rejection and those types of things. I've always told people about you because you have like the best energy. It's always a good time, you know, when we're here. What are your tips for people who are very nervous? Because this is probably one of the areas I remember like talking myself up, and like I think I overthought it because it was the easiest thing. Once I was settled into the speech itself, my nerves were gone, and I really just kind of looked at real faces and I was like talking to them like a normal human. So what are your tips for people as they go into their first stages or bigger stages to reduce their nerves?
Yeah, I've got two things. One is, and I'll break it down. One, but let me say them before I forget them. One is, I think you don't give yourself enough credit. And the second one is, what will calm your nerves is rehearsing. And so I think even professional speakers think that they can just show up on stage and like they got this, and you know they're just gonna wing it, like, because I'm good on stage, so I got it, I know the information. But if you get lost somewhere, that's where it kind of like, you know, starts to get a little wonky. So you rehearse what it is that you're going to say. And, you know, for me at this point, I have everything scripted. I didn't start out that way. But I'm sure there were some times along the way where I got lost and I was like, oh my gosh, that's never going to happen again. Right. Yeah. But now I have it all scripted, and it doesn't sound scripted because I've rehearsed it so many times that now I just kind of know. But I start with the script. So I've got it all scripted. But I mean, look, I'm not suggesting that you go write, you know, 1,500 words or whatever that would be. That'd only be 10 minutes, but 1,500 words. But you at least have like the outline, right? And know what that is, and you've rehearsed it, and you've rehearsed the sections. The first one that I said, I think, is something you need to tell yourself, which is you're not giving yourself enough credit. I was just at an event last week, last week. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to remember where it was. I think it was the Tampa one. Anyway, I was in Tampa. This woman got up. She spoke. She was doing great. Now, look, she was somebody who wasn't like an Amy Dix, like, I can't wait to get on stage, like a professional speaker. She was representing her company. And so I'm pretty sure she got chosen to go up there and speak and represent her company, right? So she already had like all these nerves, but she was doing so good. Like so good. I even in my mind said to myself, man, she's better than the previous speakers that have come up.
Oh, funny.
She froze and she said, I don't think I can do this. And she walked off the stage.
Oh my goodness.
And I just thought to myself, I didn't know this woman, but I just thought to myself, and I told so many people who knew her to tell her, I'm like, she didn't give herself enough credit. She was doing so good, but whatever she was telling herself in her head made her freeze, gave her like a panic attack almost. So like, you gotta give yourself credit. Like, I promise you, it's not as bad as like you might be thinking that it is.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Because I've had that too, where I'm like, oh, I wonder how I did. Because for me, I almost like black out. I don't remember what I just said.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was all good. But in those moments of like freezing and panicking, what do you advise people to do? Is it to just kind of like take a deep breath and you reset your thoughts? The way that I've been able to calm my nerves, I know in those moments, is to just lock my eyes onto somebody. Usually it's the person who's like this. I'm like, all right, cool, they get it. And I usually try and just focus on them. But what are your tips for people that do tend to freeze or worry about stuttering or kind of get in those moments?
Yeah. Know that the audience wants you to succeed. Which is why you probably look at the person that's going like this.
Yeah.
I've seen several instances of this. I was at a almost like a TED Talk kind of thing the other day. This is a while ago. But anyway, so these folks had their speeches and they had rehearsed them, and he was telling his story, and he totally froze in this big theater. All these people are watching him, completely froze. And it just went silent. And then all of a sudden people started like, woohoo, like clapping for him, like, you got this, and like screaming out all this great like affirmations for him. And he finally, and he's like, oh, I remember. And then he started up again. And I was like, that was actually so good, because he took the moment. I know it's awkward, but trust me, it probably feels way longer than what it actually is. But just take the moment and see if you can't regroup, and know that the audience wants you to succeed. So they're not judging you. Most of them are. That probably goes back to the original part of this conversation, right? It's like, so many people are so scared. Like, they're probably sitting there going, oh my gosh,
I could never do that.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm the same way. I look at people up there and I'm like, that's so, like, one, it's like so brave to get up in front of a group of people and be the expert. And two, like, I don't want to, I'll just sit here quietly and enjoy it. So I think you're absolutely right. It's such a good reminder, is that the audience, they want you to be successful in what you're doing. And so I think that's our worry, right? Is we're being judged. We're saying it wrong. We sound nervous. I always think I sound nervous, and then I'll replay the things that I, recorded, and I'm like, oh, I actually sound pretty confident. It's in my head. So it's a lot of mental like things to overcome, I think, when it comes to the speaking side. I did want to pivot and ask your opinion on slide decks and presentations and visuals, because Michael and I notoriously go into speeches like we do it the night before, and we probably should prep a little better, but that's our style. We feel like it's a lot more, we actually feel like we're less nervous if we're less rehearsed. But that also includes our slide deck sometimes. And so what is your thought on going into these? Should people do them? How should they put them together? Because I do find that when I watch speeches and it's very text heavy on screens, I almost don't know where to focus my attention. And so what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, it depends on what you're presenting, right? So like, if I am going out for my typical keynote, I do have slides, but they are pictures only of things that correlate to my story, really. So that's it. I don't have any text on any of my slides. I don't think. No. I have a quote from Bob Ross. I take that back. I have one quote from Bob Ross on one of my slides. That's it. And it depends. Like if it's a teaching thing, like what I just did is like a teaching thing, right? So you might have slides for that.
Right.
And just know that pictures are better than words, right? So like if you're it should supplement your talk, not be your talk.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Because I do see, I remember watching one and it was like everything he read was like the title or the bullets. Like, it's really
Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's good. And in our space, we're talking about SEO and we're talking to small business owners on marketing. And I don't think they digest most of what we're saying. And so having visual aids just be visual aids is like such a good point. Do you ever recommend that people do one for every topic? Is there any kind of structure when it comes to what we're showing in those PowerPoints?
That they do one
slide.
For every topic they're talking about?
Yeah.
No, like, look, the thing that brings your expertise to the stage is less of the ABC, or I should say, is less of the 1, 2, 3 statistics and is more of the ABC, which is your stories that you can tell, right? So if you do SEO, let's just say, and you're like, this is the results that we can get for you. I'm way less interested in way less interested in seeing all the statistics and everything, and more interested in you telling me a story about one of your clients who just has killed it, right? And that you've been able to completely transform. Like, that's what I'm going to remember. I'm not going to really remember all the statistics and data of the things that you can do, but I'm going to remember that you took Joe, small business owner, from a 2-man shop to a 12-man shop, whatever it is, right? So that is going to resonate with me more, and that's what I'm going to remember. And that's what gives you like the greatness of a thought leader, right? Or the greatness of an expert, is being able to transform. So saying you can do one thing, but having the stories to support it, like that's what makes you dynamic on stage.
For sure. I see a lot of people open up with emotional stories. I think they do it for relatability. And sometimes they're personal. And I think sometimes they are about the situations or storytelling about clients. And that it does seem to automatically engage. And then they kind of roll into everything else. So I think that's always a great way to open things up. This is an interesting thing. How personal do you think people should get with these, by the way? Because I've heard some interesting openers where I'm like, I forgot what I'm here to actually learn about. Suddenly we're talking about your grandma and how she was sick. And I'm like completely lost in this. How do you recommend people engage in a way that still keeps people focused on why they're there?
Yeah. I mean, you use the stories to supplement, to prove your point, or to make a point, not prove. That sounds terrible. To make a point. It's not something that's cathartic for you, right? Like that's not the intention. That might feel good for you, and you might want to tell everyone about your grandma because she's so cool and so great and, was such a big piece of your life. But if you can't draw the point for us, then you've lost the audience, right? So like there has to be like that through line. And if there's a story that you can take us through from beginning to end and just tell us and like have that through line the whole time while still relating it to every single bit, like this is if I'm SEO, if I'm teaching on SEO, then and my grandma taught me all these lessons, and that's why I understand SEO, because I remember she said this. And then when I was working with this one client, it came to me. She was like, oh my gosh, this is whatever, and that's why this works with SEO. This is a stretch, by the way. But if you can do that, then great. If it makes no sense and you can't draw the correlation or the line for us, then take it out. Just take it out.
Yeah, I find it doesn't come off authentic if we're like just throwing in emotional things for the sake of being a relatable person. It to me, I'm always like, this is just strikes me as odd.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad we got your feedback on that, because I do think that people, I think there's a way to go about it. It's not to say that you can't do it. I think there's just a way to go about it where, like you said, you have to relate it to what we're about to talk to, or your grandma's cheerleading you in the background. Cool. Now we're talking about what? Like that. It really has to make sense. So
It's like, Brittany, this is what it reminds me of. It reminds me of, and I hope I don't offend anyone because it's not my intention, but it reminds me of like bios, when people write bios and then at the end of the bio, it's like, and I have 3 children and love to go for long walks on the beach or whatever, and I'm like, what? Great. And I'm trying to figure out how you're a thought leader, how you're an expert. So great. If you can correlate it all together, then it doesn't sound chunky. But if you can't, then it just sounds chunky.
Yeah. That's very true. It's like you just threw it in there for no reason, for the sake of it. Okay. Any last tips, your best tricks, your hacks, whatever it is for this audience, as they're getting themselves built up in front of people, stages, speaking opportunities, things like that?
Yeah, I think I would leave everyone with this: is say yes. You got to say yes to the opportunities, all the opportunities that come your way. I mean, even today, I don't say no to any opportunities. I constantly say yes, because you just never know like what the next thing's going to be, And so if you're building your company and truly you want to speak in order to build your company, say yes. Invest in that piece of the business. Make it like a marketing channel for you. Budget that marketing spend, and just say yes.
I love that. Well, considering you are like one of the happiest people I have ever met, I'll take that as a piece of life advice as well. All right. Well, thank you so much to everybody who watched our live stream and catches a replay. Amy, where can people find you if they need more help in this space or want to find out more about what you do?
Yeah, I mean, you can always go to our, authorityspeakersagency.com. And for you and for your people, Brittany, they can always email me at amy@authorityspeakersagency.com. And I'm happy to help anyone who's a friend of Brittany and knows Brittany. I'm a friend of yours. So you just ask me whatever you need and I'll get you going in the right direction.
Thank you so much. All right, Amy, thank you for joining us. Thanks for everyone out there. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.